Hi clarophiles and clarophilettes. Here I'm making good on my second video on the quantification of the clarinet. In our first video we spoke about the Aristotelian four causes, and we looked at the clarinet through the lens of the four causes, and what we concluded was that the final cause of the clarinet, that is its ultimate purpose, is to play the musical sound phrase. So what? So, well, in order to really find out what's demanded of the clarinet in more specific terms, we must investigate the musical sound phrase, and that's what we're going to do in this upcoming video. In investigating a musical sound phrase, let's start in the most basic place that we can, and begin talking about exactly what musical sound is. Now, if I were to describe a musical sound as opposed to noise, I would say that musical sound has three characteristics that you don't find in just random noise. I mean, you find these elements in random noise, but you don't find them with the consistency and stability that you find in a musical tone. Imagine, if you will, the musical tone not as just an abstract sound, but as kind of a solid sphere, a solid ball. Okay, and inside that ball, that is intrinsic to the musical sound, we find three elements. And the first element is pitch. And the pitch, the consistent pitch, consistent frequencies, that's the very thing that enables us to identify an A as opposed to a B or a C or a D or an octave higher or an octave lower. Consistent frequency is really part of the musical sound. Now, also part of the musical sound is color. What we call the color of the sound or the timbre of the sound. Sometimes people argue themselves blue over whether a sound's dark or bright or whatever. But we see a recipe, or we hear a recipe in the sound of lows, middles, and highs in terms of frequency. And this gives us a certain color in the sound, okay? And besides color and pitch, we find a third element, and that is shape. Now, a shape can be diffused, it can be blurred, just like a photograph that you might look at. It might be very sharply defined, very well defined on the outer parameters and seem rather solid. Or it might be kind of hazy and vague, sort of like an impressionistic painting. All these things have to do with shape. And also, shape can rupture and become something amorphous, not quite that nice sphere shape, or as I like to describe the clarinet sound, kind of an onion-shaped sound or a teardrop-shaped sound, with the core and the center as part of the top of that teardrop. So these are the characteristics of the musical sound: pitch, color, and shape, with great consistency, so we can identify all three of those things. Well, that's a good beginning, but there's more, and we're going to talk about that, you guessed it, next. Besides the intrinsic elements of sound, pitch, color, and shape, there are extrinsic forces that bear weight upon this little sphere, this convenient sphere of stable pitch, color, and shape. And those forces are what musicians call dynamics. We play loud and we play soft. If you actually want to see what's demanded in the musical sound phrase, all you need to do is open a page of your favorite music, and you'll see all those demands laid out in very explicit terms, in terms of dynamics and shadings and slurs, articulations, playing low, playing high, playing soft, playing loud. Well, the thing that happens in the musical sound phrase is that when dynamics come to bear upon pitch, color, and shape, regarding the clarinet, what we find is, to one degree or another, a certain amount of instability sets in. For instance, on the clarinet, if we play louder, then the pitch might tend to sag. Okay, and the color also might brighten up quite a bit. We might get more highs in the recipe of the sound. And also, if we have to play so loud, we might find that the shape itself will rupture. And this is something we certainly don't want to happen. If we play softer, there's probably a good chance that the pitch might rise rather than fall, that the sound might get very tight, very pinched, and very thin, and the color might actually get dull or lose some of its vibrance and some of its focus and projection. So whenever dynamics are brought to bear on the musical sound, you find this instability sets in, and it's a very, very great concern of clarinet players to try to maintain as much stability in pitch, color, and shape as a general rule when dynamics are brought to bear upon the sound, and it's one of the things that's a very important part of our training. Okay, so we've gone from the musical sound itself, the intrinsic elements, and then the extrinsic elements bearing upon it, the forces of dynamics, loud and soft. And then the next thing we find is not just dynamics, but a whole series of different tones, of different pitches. Because the musical sound phrase is not just a musical sound, but the phrase means that it's a whole bunch of connected sounds. And when you get connected sounds, then two forces that you actually don't hear come to bear and become very important. And we're going to talk about those next. So what are these mysterious, unheard elements that bear so much influence on the musical sound phrase? Well, it's actually one thing, but we perceive it in two different ways. And so we're going to talk about it in the two different ways that we perceive. Those things that we don't hear but bear a great deal of influence on the quality and the results of the musical sound phrase are response and resistance, and both of them are extremely important to making successful clarinet phrasing. For instance, we need even response throughout the clarinet. We need high notes and low notes and middle notes to all respond the same. We need our middle break to match as much as possible. We need our long pipe to short pipe within the clarion register to match as much as possible. And we also need a fluid, seamless entry into the in and out of the third register. This is what you call even response and even matching resistance. And it's extremely important in being able to connect, especially legato passages, but also have security and articulation. Response and resistance tremendously influence your ability to play with freedom and security. Because if you find the clarinet is inconsistent and undependable in response and resistance, then you're going to struggle to just achieve what I call primitive information or bare minimum. So this is very, very important, and it's one of the most important clues in being able to evaluate and test clarinets and choose the clarinet that's going to enable you to play like a true musician and a true artist with a lot of freedom. I've tried to do that with our clarinets. That's one of with in fact all of our equipment, to provide that predictability in very high degrees, and that's why we always have our motto as being free your imagination. So what do we have when we look at all this quantification of the clarinet? We have pitch, color, and shape as the intrinsic elements of sound. We have extrinsic elements bearing on pitch, color, and shape, trying to destabilize them, so to speak, or tending to destabilize them. And then we have this idea of connecting lots of these different sounds in lots of dynamic ranges, lots of pitch levels, lots of registration. We have that consideration of response and resistance throughout this whole panoply of pitches and dynamics. So it's a very complicated thing. What have we got when we look at it? Well, actually, we've actually got the complete quantification of the demands of music upon the clarinet. And this quantification can be used to evaluate our progress, to evaluate what needs to be done in terms of what needs to be worked on by ourselves, and to also test and evaluate equipment. And I presented this quantification of the clarinet so that you would have a framework for thinking about the clarinet in the future and thinking about your own experience, because every experience you have will fall under one of these categories: pitch, color, shape, stability and dynamic changes, response and resistance. You don't know everything when you know this quantification, but because you have it quantified, because you have everything classified now that needs to be classified, when you learn something new, you'll know where it belongs. You'll know how it fits in the whole. And this will save you a lot of grief, a lot of frustration, and the feeling of being lost and not knowing what to do next, or not knowing what to work on next. Or when you pick up a clarinet or a mouthpiece or whatever to test, not knowing exactly what you're looking for. And when that happens, of course, you become the victim of hype and people that are telling you that so-and-so plays this instrument, therefore it's the best and you must play it. That's all nonsense. You must learn to test the clarinets yourself. You must learn to evaluate equipment yourself to get the most efficient equipment possible. And the quantification of the clarinet is one of the main objective means by which you can do that. And so that's why I'm sharing all this for you, or with you, and I hope that it'll provide a framework for your thought and order your own experience in clarinet playing like it has mine, and help you like it has me. And if it does, it'll be a heck of a lot of help, I'll tell you that. Thanks for watching.